it out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 575th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell, who once again is not here. Although he said he's going to try to be here next week. So we have some hopes for that. This show is an aggregation of news about energy and climate change that is taken from my blog, geoharvey.com. If you want to read the details of any article that I talk about here, you can go to that website, geoharvey, Geoharvey. But there's also, and going there means that you would have to find, you'd have to click on the date for the show. But there's other ways of doing it. Below on the screen here, there should be, if you're doing this on a computer, there should be a couple of places where you can follow links. One of them will permit you to download the notes for the show, and another one takes you to a website for the show, and so you can go there. In either case, you're going to see 21 articles, and all of them are on the show here. So it's probably a better approach than going to my website. So I'm gonna start. This show is running from May 23rd, which is a Thursday, to May 30th, which is a Wednesday. Today it's being recorded on May 31st. And so into it. The first item on the for the show is an article from Power Engineering. And the title of this is Entergy Louisiana approved for historic 3 gigawatts of solar development. Entergy Louisiana's proposal to add up to 3 gigawatts of economic solar to its generation portfolio has been approved by the Louisiana Public Service Commission, marking what the utility calls the largest renewable energy expansion in the state's history. Now, I've been watching Entergy. I think I should start by saying the thing that we were all familiar with around here in Brattleboro was the fact that Entergy was the owner of the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant. And so a lot of people in Brattleboro had a kind of a bitterness toward Entergy. But what I've been seeing in the last several years is that Entergy in Louisiana, in Mississippi, in some other states in that part of the country, as I recall, Arkansas, has been building more and more in the way of solar power. Not wind power. Wind power is not particularly good in that area. There's not a lot of wind to harvest. But certainly there's a lot of solar, and 3 gigawatts is a lot of electricity. I think 3 gigawatts is probably approximately equivalent to the 640, as I recall, megawatts that Vermont Yankee produced. Since the sun doesn't always shine and isn't constant in its brightness, the capacity factor of solar power is significantly lower than it is for nuclear. The capacity factor of nuclear in the United States is upwards of 90%, where the capacity factor of solar in an area like Louisiana, I would expect to be below 20%. So nuclear power with the same nameplate capacity would produce maybe 4 or 5 times as much electricity. Anyhow, Entergy is building these solar farms, and probably will have batteries. And when you combine battery and solar, you can wind up with something that is as reliable as nuclear energy and a whole lot cheaper. So that is that story. I'm going to go on to the next story. This is from Ember, which is an organization that keeps track of such things. The title is Draft National Targets Put EU Just Short of Repower EU. National energy and climate plans are the principal documents produced by EU member states, EU being the European Union, to detail their climate targets. National ambition is nearing what's needed for the EU's energy targets, but a further push is needed to close the remaining gap and accelerate deployment. So what they're saying is that the European Union's renewable targets are not really being met, but it's close. And if they speed things up just a little bit, it'll probably be fine. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next item here. This reminds me of my youth. This is from Clean Technica, and the title is Berlin's oldest passenger vessel enters a new green era powered by Torqeedo. The historic vessel Kaiser Friedrich was built in 1886. That's a long time ago. The 30-meter steamship has returned to service in central Berlin. In a bid to preserve its legacy, the owners refitted the historic vessel with a modern, emission-free electric drive system by Torqeedo. Now, obviously, Torqeedo is a company that powers boats, ships with electric power systems. The thing that this reminds me of, very different looking ship. I took a ride on a side paddle steamboat, which might have been a ship called the Goethe, but I'm not 100% sure of that. The Goethe is the only one, as I understand it, that still remains. And it was an old ship at the time I took it. I went from Düsseldorf to Mainz. That was the plan, which was a day-long trip, and it was really quite an interesting thing. It was still driven by steam and still powered by side paddles, and I imagine that could be electrified too. Some of these things are really beautiful, and I think that people who have never done them and have a chance, a lot of people would be kind of delighted by the opportunity. Okay, the next item has a picture of, the caption for this is really kind of deceptive. This says birds near offshore wind turbine. Now, these are cranes, as I understand it. And are they near that turbine? No, they are not near that turbine. The camera is focused on them. It is not focused on the turbine. The turbine is a long ways away. And anyway, so I'm going to say the caption is not 100% correct. This is from Clean Technica. The title of the article is Seabird Study Shows How They Might One Day Share the Air with Offshore Wind Turbines. Researchers from the United States Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and from H.T. Harvey and Associates published results from a study to find out how high seabirds fly. You'd think that they would have known this already. And whether they might interact with wind turbines in frontiers of marine energy. Now, I want to say H.T. Harvey and Associates is no relative of mine, at least not that I know. I don't have many relatives named Harvey in the United States. And there have been studies going back a long time of how seabirds interact with wind turbines, and some of which were really kind of remarkable. But they're doing another one, just to be sure. Okay, I'm going to go on. The next picture is a picture of a hurricane. And it is, that's quite a hurricane. It's got a really well-developed eye. And I don't remember what hurricane it is. This is from ABC News. ABC News being the American Broadcast Company. When I have articles that are simply ABC, that means Australian Broadcast Company, and I try always to explain that. The title is NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Aeronautic Administration, predicts record hurricane season for 2024. NOAA's forecast for the upcoming hurricane season says all categories of storms are expected to exceed the typical number seen every year. Warming of the surface ocean temperatures from human-induced climate change is likely fueling more powerful tropical cyclones and extreme precipitation. Now, just so people know, there is very clear evidence, very clear, that climate change, which is happening, is being produced by human activity. And the reason this is very clear has to do, or at least one reason it's very clear, possibly the easiest for me to explain, is that I think most people have heard of carbon-14. There are other carbon isotopes. Carbon-14 is compared to carbon-12, but there is yet one more isotope which is not radioactive and exists in the atmosphere and in plant life, and that's carbon-13. The thing is, plants tend to like to take down carbon-12 preferentially over carbon-13. And that means that over the millions of years in our past, plants have taken carbon-12, stored it away in coal, in natural gas, in oil, in whatever. And that has changed the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13 that's in the atmosphere. Now, when you take that stuff up and burn it, burning coal, burning oil, burning natural gas, it releases some of that carbon-13. And we can see, looking at trees that have grown in the last 100 years, for example, other things that have grown in the last 100 years, we can see, scientists can see, an increase in the ratio of carbon-13 to carbon-12. The only explanation for that is that carbon-13 has been released into the atmosphere, and that it is more available. So that is a pretty clear indication that the climate change is human-induced. NOAA is making this prediction on the basis of warming seas, which are a serious problem. I remember a couple of years ago seeing that the water in the Gulf of Mexico was 7.5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it usually had been in the past. And that, when the sea is warmer, the water evaporates more easily. It makes the air above the sea warmer, so it'll hold more water, which means that more water is put into clouds, and when those clouds hit cooler altitudes or cooler weather, they just start dumping that water out, and you get very much increased rainfall. You get stronger storms in some cases. And so this is why NOAA is saying a stronger, that and also the El Nino La Nina cycle has its contributions to do. So on to the next piece. This is from Renews. Renews, the Renews items that I put up on my blog are short, and they are easily available to anybody who wants to visit them. They're pretty simple, and I like them for that reason. Renews also has a subscription service that people can have, and I can't advise it for the simple reason that I don't use it and I don't know much about it. But what I have seen of it looks pretty good to me. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you might be interested in it. The title for this is Atlantic Shores 1 and 2, SEAL, FEIS. Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind has announced the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has released its final environmental impact statement for the 2,800 megawatt Atlantic Shores Project 1 and 2 off the coast of New Jersey. The schemes are a 50-50 partnership of Shell and EDF Renewables. EDF is the initials of the electricity of France. And what's happening here is that the offshore wind farms that have been slowed down in the last year, 2 years, by inflation and problems getting parts, are getting underway again. In many cases, several cases, companies that had contracted for those had to withdraw from the contracts, and in some cases lost a lot of money. There was Ørsted, for example, had to settle with New Jersey by giving it $125 million, as I recall, to get out of a contract. Okay, the next item is from The Guardian, and it has a picture of a nodding donkey against a setting sun, rising sun, who can tell? The title is Nearly 125 Arrested as Climate Protesters Target France's Total Energies and Key Investor. The head of Total Energies has told shareholders that new oil fields have to be developed to meet global demand as the annual meetings of French energy giant and one of its biggest shareholders were picketed. The police arrested 173 protesters. I would say that if the police are going to arrest 173 protesters, that is a pretty good indication that there was a big crowd and people were getting possibly a little unruly, at least. This is, of course, we're in a position where climate change is getting pretty fierce looking, and organizations like Total Energies, which is very often just called Total, are still looking to drill for more oil and more gas. We should be ditching oil and gas. So it's really easy to understand why these protesters got riled up. So, yeah. Our next item is from Clean Technica. And here we have a picture of a toot bus. And you know, I don't know, toot bus just doesn't sound like the name of an electric bus to me. However, it is from Clean Technica, and the title is Toot Bus Unveils End-to-End Renewable Power for its Electric Fleet with VEV Solar Panel Project in Wandsworth. That's the title. Toot Bus, the world's first low-emissions sightseeing bus company, has secured approval for plans to install roof-mounted solar panels on their Wandsworth depot working in collaboration with VEV, which is an electric fleet provider. So basically what's happening here is that they are providing, they have electric buses. The electric buses are sightseeing buses. You can see this. This is a double-decker bus, which is not all that uncommon in the UK. I remember living in Devon. The roads were narrow by American standards. They had very often had hedgerows on both sides. The roads were sunken. The hedgerows were built from soil from the roads. So the base for the hedgerow might have been 6 feet off the ground relative to the road surface. And on top of that, it would have a hedge. And the roads would just kind of wander back and forth, you know, and you'd be driving down a road and all of a sudden there's a double-decker bus in front of you. And believe me, these things are scary looking when you have them pop up in front of you. Now, I was 15 at that time and I didn't drive, so my father always seemed to know where he was going, and he didn't have problems. There is a story about my father. He was driving with a friend across the Washington Bridge, and the fog was so thick that his friend looked out the window and could not see the lines on the road. And he turned to my father and said, how can you get across, drive in fog that is this thick? And my dad said, oh, don't worry, I was a navigator in the Navy. I don't, what can I say? Things didn't bother him. And the roads in Devon didn't bother him, and the double-decker buses didn't bother him. And now we have a story from The Guardian. And this is a picture of bad weather. Yeah, it's bad weather, lightning, obviously a narrow storm dumping rain. And although it does look a bit like a tornado, doesn't it? A little bit. But it to my eyes looks like a storm dumping a lot of rain in one place. And the title of this article is Kitty Cat Storms Hitting U.S. Heartland Are a Growing Threat to Home Insurance. I'm actually writing an article for Green Energy Times now about this very problem. Insurance companies are threatened by hurricanes made worse by climate change. But the problem is becoming a crisis that stretches far inland. Another less talked about disaster has wreaked havoc on states in the Midwest and the Great Plains. And one of the states that I was not terribly surprised, because I've been doing the show and doing my blog and writing and so forth for years and years. One of the states where this was a problem is Iowa. And of course, people in Iowa don't see a lot of activity from hurricanes, but they have seen activity from other things. Tornadoes getting worse. Derricos, I didn't even know what that was until they started showing up in the news a few years ago. Other kinds of storms causing other kinds of problems. And these are things that happen, and they are serious problems. There have always been serious problems, but the serious problems that show up these days are worse, and they are more obviously connected to climate change. And in Iowa, yeah, they have problems. For insurance companies, insurance is a business that is based on probability. The insurance company is providing a service for a premium that is calculated based on a probability. They will back you up so that if you lose everything, they'll come in and try to help you put things back together. That gets to be a serious problem when they don't know what the probability is anymore. And in some places, they're losing track of the probability, and the insurance companies are losing a lot of money in some places because the probabilities cannot be calculated for storms that are made worse by climate change. Well, maybe they can be. Maybe, you know, people make models and so forth. But anyway, there that is. Okay, the next item I have is from Clean Technica. If I have items regarding electric vehicles, it's probably from Clean Technica, because the people there love to write about electric vehicles. I've written I've written over 80 articles for Clean Technica, and I don't know, but I think that I've written one article about cars, and it suggested that maybe we should build a car like the Baker Electric of 1903. Okay, this article is called Is the Chevy Equinox the affordable EV we have been waiting for? Let me put it up again. There it is. That's the Chevy Equinox. Paul Fosse wrote this. It's an opinion piece. I think, that is, Paul Fosse thinks, the Chevy has a winner on its hand with the Equinox EV 1LT, which is an amazing value. I think the higher trims may have to offer some incentives to gain share of this ultra-competitive segment, since Tesla, Hyundai, and Kia are offering compelling vehicles for similar prices. Basically, what we're looking at here is a situation in which the prices of cars in the United States, electric cars, I should say, are falling. And there are many reasons for this, one of which is that the prices of batteries are falling. And by the way, there's a lot of ink being spilled on the question of lithium-ion batteries and how dangerous they are. And I think that's part of an operation to keep the oil and gas companies in business, because yes, Tesla is building cars using lithium-ion batteries in the United States. The cars that it builds in China use lithium ferrophosphate batteries, which are very much less likely to catch fire and easier to put out in a fire. But the cars in the United States are have lithium-ion batteries, which are far, 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 far safer than gasoline. And I tried, for the purpose of this discussion, to find out how powerful the current thinking is that an explosion involving gasoline that has been evaporated is. And I couldn't get an exact figure, but the figures that I did get ranged from 1 gallon of gasoline dissipated into the air has an explosive capacity that's approximately equal to 20 sticks of dynamite. That's the minimum. The maximum was 80 sticks of dynamite. And that's what people put in their garages, in their homes. We're used to that. It's easy. People are used to it. They know how likely it is that their garage is going to blow up. Unfortunately, gasoline powered fires on the road do happen. From what I found, maybe 100,000 a year. And the number of vehicles that catch fire on the roads that are EVs is so low that they aren't being recalled. And it's just an extremely low figure. But certain organizations, including news organizations, but also organizations that have interests in oil and gas, really want you to know, or believe, I should say, that the batteries in vehicles and home batteries and so forth are dangerous. And, yeah, there is a possibility that they can catch fire. That is true. And the probability that they're going to catch fire is extremely low. So let me go on to the next item here. We have a picture of Bill McKibben. Of all people, why would we have a picture of Bill McKibben? This is from Clean Technica. And the title is, Bill McKibben Thinks Climate Change is the Key to a Biden Win in November. Bill McKibben, the committed climate activist who has been educating us about the dangers of climate change for decades, he's not the only one, by the way, has some advice for Joe Biden as the next presidential campaign heats up. Hit the topic of climate change early and often. I happen to agree with Bill McKibben on this. I think that Joe Biden will have a better chance in November if he dwells on climate change. People are concerned about climate change. I think people should be concerned about climate change. Things have happened in climate. The rise of the water in the Gulf of Mexico, 6 inches in the last 10 years. They were saying 10 years ago that it would be 6 inches during this century. And 10 years ago, that meant in 85 years or so. But it's been 10 years, 6 inches. 10 years ago, the state of Louisiana, with a Republican administration, had gone to various areas along the Gulf and up the Mississippi River and told the people who lived in those areas that they would have to be ready to evacuate permanently. That is to say, get all their possessions into a trailer and head north, find a new place to live. And Cameron Parish, which is about the size of Windham County and Bennington County put together, a parish in Louisiana is the equivalent of a county. Basically, the whole county was told that they had to leave and that this would probably happen in 25 years. My guess is the state of Louisiana is getting ready to tell those people to move out now. And because they're Republican, I think they might wait until after the election, but I think that people are going to have to, and Cameron Parish, by the way, had the highest pro-Trump vote of any county-sized organization in the United States in the I don't remember which election it was. I think it was 2016. Anyway, we have to go on. We have a picture here of the Volvo Ocean Race and an article from Interesting Engineering. And the title of the article is World's First Hydrogen-Powered Yacht is Set to Compete in the Ocean Race. Phil Sharp, the inventor of the hydrogen power module, and co-founder of Renewables, a leading developer of marine fuel cell systems, plans to compete in the Ocean Race with the world's first hydrogen-powered racing boat, showcasing benefits of renewable energy. These boats, and by the way, neither of those boats is the one that he was talking about, but that's the picture that I've got. These boats are, I've just lost my ability to change. What do I do? These boats are on a race that goes around the world. And yeah, I've lost my ability to change. Okay, so you don't get to see my face anymore. And this is a long race. It will go for a very long time. And the boat that he's going to be using has a lot of material on it has a lot of equipment on it to do things like capture sunshine, make it into electricity, create hydrogen out of that, put the hydrogen into a fuel cell. All of that stuff can be done on the boat. And so that's a way to keep this boat going when other boats are stalled because the wind isn't blowing. And of course it has wind power as well. Now we're up to Monday, May 27th. We have a solar parking shade, and this is from Renew Economy. I'm still trying to find my cursor so I can get back to where I was. The title for this article is Australia's low-cost solar PV goal could change everything about the grid. The CSIRO Gen Cost report published last week has sparked a new polemic about the cost of generating technologies, with critics in the solar camp not liking the country's main scientific research agency, saying that nuclear is really expensive. Now, CSIRO is Commonwealth Science and Industry Report Organization. I think it's a report. And this is the Australian government's main thing on science. So it's a big deal that is looking at generating scientific reports. The current government is a Labor government. The Liberal government, which operates in a manner that we would call conservative, has been pushing nuclear energy. And they've tried to make this into an election thing. And unfortunately for them, CSIRO reported that nuclear power is just too expensive. And you can't cure climate change with it because it takes too long to deliver, even if it's small modular reactors. So naturally, the coalition, which is the liberal operation, a couple of parties together, has objected to the CSIRO report, and that's where they are for the time being. Okay, we have a report from ABC News. This is American news broadcast, and the airplane here is a Qatar aircraft, Qatar Airways. 12 people injured when plane hits turbulence. This is a new thing that people have not really talked about, and it's potentially a serious problem that is developing. 12 people were injured when a Qatar Airways plane flying from Doha to Dublin hit turbulence, airport authorities said. Some meteorologists note that reports of turbulence encounters have been increasing and point to the potential impacts that climate change may have on flying conditions. So there we've got another problem that can be, blamed on climate change, and it is getting worse. And of course, there are other things about flying that are difficult. Jet aircraft use enormous amounts of fuel to get people from one place to another, and it's very hard to know how we're going to be moving people in the future. But it's very clear that we have to find some way of either fueling jet aircraft differently or using a different kind of aircraft altogether because of the amount of material that's used up. Okay, amount of material that is burned, let me put it that way, releasing more carbon dioxide. Okay, we have a report here from The Edge, Malaysia. And this is a picture of Kuala Lumpur. And if you had shown me if you'd shown me 20 years ago this picture and said this is Kuala Lumpur, I would not have believed you. But this is happening all over the world. Cities are getting bigger and more expensive looking and brighter lighted and so forth. The title is Government Aims for 40% of Primary Energy Mix to Come from Renewable Energy Sources by 2035. Malaysia aims to ensure that 40% of the country's primary energy mix comes from renewable energy sources by 2035, according to Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadila Yusuf. And I'm sorry if that was pronounced wrong. It's almost certain that it was, but I tried. This would reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 10 million metric tons every year. So that's a lot of million metric tons. We are up to Tuesday, May 28th, and we have an article from Clean Technica. This is a picture of a Komatsu battery electric haul truck. Now, that truck, if you look at it on the right side, and you look carefully into that dark area, you can see that there's a flight of stairs. There's also a little thing of 4 steps that can be lowered so a person can get onto the truck at the bottom of that flight of stairs. In other words, the person who is operating this truck is about 2 stories up in the air. And these trucks can carry huge amounts of ore, for example. But this particular truck is 100% powered by battery electric. The title is Rio Tinto and BHP collaborate on battery electric haul truck trials in the Pilbara. Now, Pilbara is a section of Western Australia that has a lot of mining done in it. In an industry first, Rio Tinto and BHP will collaborate on testing large battery electric haul truck technology in the Pilbara, Western Australia. The 2 companies will work with Caterpillar and Komatsu to conduct trials of their battery electric haul trucks. So that is interesting, I think. Anyway, we're on to our next story. We have a picture of the Port of Tyne, and this is from Renews. And the title is Port of Tyne enters HVDC cable factory talks. The Port of Tyne in the UK and LS Echo Advanced Cables UK are negotiating for a long-term lease for a cables factory. LS EAC, that's LS Echo Advanced Cables, is interested in potential for high voltage DC factory on the Tyne Renewables quay site in the northeast of England. It would be worth an investment of £923 million, which is approximately $1,176 million. And obviously this high voltage DC is a way of getting electricity from one place to another with very little loss, I should say. We've got to a point where the line losses, cables are getting better, and a lot of that has to do with now we can switch voltages on DC far better than we could 20 or 30 years ago. And so cable loss has been reduced enormously in the last few years. Now, we have a picture of offshore wind turbines. This is from Euronews.com. The title here is Energy Giant RWE to build 2 new wind farms off the German coast. Germany's largest power producer, RWEAG, announced it is to construct 1.6 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity in the North Sea. It took the decision despite ongoing supply chain challenges and soaring costs that have halted some offshore wind projects in the UK and the US. That is the problem with offshore wind that I alluded to earlier when we were talking about the wind power in the United States, and the fact that the contracts had been broken off the coast of New Jersey and elsewhere. Okay, they have started back up again, and they've started back up in Germany. Next item. This is a Tesla in Canada, of all places. Who'd have thought that they actually had Teslas in Canada? Well, Canada's not really behind the United States, is it? This is from Clean Technica, and the title is All the Ways Cars Harm the World. And I have to say, I think this is a fascinating article. Clean Technica has many articles showing love for electric vehicles, but here, two authors show how cars, even if they're electric vehicles, are harmful to people and communities. The psychologist Carl Jung said everything has a shadow or dark side, and clean tech authors explore the big-time shadow of the pervasive automobile. And basically, the cost of automobiles in terms of harm to people and communities is enormous. This is a really good article. If you want to pick one article to read out of the things that have been there today, Clean Technica article from Wednesday, May 29th. I'm going to press ahead, however. We have an article from the Bay Journal. And what we have here is a picture of a coal mining site. And this site, which I think is probably only part of the coal mine, either that or this hole in the ground is a lot bigger than it looks, which could be the case. But this is the site, and the picture is from Swift Current Energy. The title is Feds Offer $90 million for Vast Solar Array on Pennsylvania Mine Land. Now, I want you to bear in mind, the solar array we're going to be talking about is going to be established on that site, the site that you see in this picture. And this is from the Bay Journal. The United States government is offering up to $90 million for a renewable energy developer to build Pennsylvania's largest solar farm on 2,700 acres of reclaimed coal mining land. Now, that picture does not look like it's 2,700 acres to me, but maybe it is. You know, maybe that, I mean, that thing looks like it's a few hundred yards across, and if it's 2,700 acres, then it's miles across. Anyway, the $800 million Mineral Basin Solar Project will have a capacity of 402 megawatts. The important thing here, the thing that I want to point out, is that this array that they're talking about is not being put in on land that would be worth fighting over. This is not going into agricultural land. It's not going into somebody's backyard or front yard or anywhere that it would be seen by anybody, unless their house is really unusually sited and had been sitting over a coal mine for quite a long time. That doesn't mean that somebody isn't going to object. Somebody might object. I don't know. Anyway, there are lots of places like this. I remember reading a story about an open pit mine that was going to be opened up years ago, and not that many years ago, in Germany. And the open pit mine was approximately twice the size of the island of Manhattan. And they were talking about cutting down forests and bulldozing villages that dated back to the Middle Ages, and some of them had buildings that dated back to the Middle Ages in them, and they were going to just cut them down. Now, I haven't heard any reports on that since, but you know, this is what we have had in the past. So if somebody tells you that about the horrible things that are happening with installations of solar and wind power, bear in mind, somebody is with money is trying to prevent those installations from going in so they can do stuff like what you see in this picture. Anyway, our next item, and this is the last item, is from a publication called Electrek, Electrek. These are just wind turbines. And the title is Renewables Provided Almost 30% of U.S. electrical generation in March. Renewables are now the second largest source of U.S. electrical generation behind natural gas, which averaged a 40.5% share during the first quarter of 2024, but fell to 39.4% in March. Electric generation from all renewables grew to 26.3% in March and grew from 26.3% in March of 2023 to 29.2% in March of 2024. Now, if you think about that, what that means is natural gas is going to fall below renewables within a very few years. And in fact, I can tell you that if you look at the material that comes out of FEMA, which has projections of how many megawatts of capacity are being removed, how many are likely to be put online in the next 3 years. Natural gas is not growing. Natural gas is falling, which is probably why the 40.5% share in Q1 fell to 39.4% in March. This is not all use of natural gas, by the way. This is use of natural gas for generating electricity. And there was a quote in this particular article. I'm sorry to say this quote is not in this article, but I'm going to read it anyway. It refers to the article about the ways cars harm the world, and it's probably a good thing for people to understand. Going back to that article. Actually, I can go back to the picture. There it is. Cars have emptied our cities, injured our children. They are the #1 cause of death worldwide, warmed the planet, polluted our lungs, robbed us blind, and they put in the note here, the average car costs over $600,000 over its lifetime, and society pays half of that cost. Now, you've heard about socialism and the evils of socialism. Tom Fennell talks about this being socializing the risk. And I think there's a good deal to be said about that. Tom is right. This is socializing the risk. And when you buy a car for $30,000, low-priced car, that's only 5% of the price, of the cost, I should say, of the car over its lifetime. The car over its lifetime will probably cost you $300,000. Fuel, maintenance, insurance, you know, the costs just pile up and pile up and pile up. New tires, getting the brakes set. Yeah, electric vehicles cost less. They don't do the damage with global warming or air pollution, but they are a problem that is a problem for emptying the cities, people being injured in accidents. All of that stuff is right there. And so we're up to a point where it's time to end the show. I'm sorry about the pictures not working out right, but you know, hopefully you didn't mind. I'm not all that handsome. Nobody wants to look at me anyway. At this point, I'm just going to say I'm waving goodbye. I actually am waving goodbye. And you know, when I had Tom Fennell on and said that he was waving goodbye, I meant what I said. He was waving goodbye. But you know, his cat probably is waving goodbye at this very moment. So y'all come back now, you hear? and revisit next time. And hopefully I will be able to switch pictures between me and what's the pictures for the show. Bye-bye. And have a significantly lovely week.